Everyone in that theater was watching the same movie. Robert sat in the third row for 11 minutes. And then he left. He walked past his wife, past his son, past the popcorn and the exit sign, and sat in his car in the parking lot for 23 minutes. Not because the movie was too painful to sit through, because the movie was too accurate, and accuracy, for this man, opens a door that the movie does not know it is opening. Because the men on that screen were going home after the cameras stopped rolling, and the men Robert was thinking about were not. I am Robert, Staff Sergeant, 101st Airborne, retired, and I want to talk about why a man who survived the real thing cannot sit through 2 hours of a movie about it. And the explanation has nothing to do with trauma. It has everything to do with a man named Danny Kowalski from Pittsburgh who played cards badly and who is not here to watch war movies with anyone. It started with a movie about Mosul. His son rented it on a Saturday night, put it on the TV, said, "Dad, you have to see this one." And Robert sat down in the armchair and gave it 14 minutes. Robert sat in that armchair for 14 minutes. And then something shifted inside him. The way things shift when the brain stops watching a movie and starts filling in what the movie cannot show. And he stood up and left. His son paused the movie, came to the kitchen. Robert said, "Yeah, just tired. Go finish it." And his son looked at him the way sons look at fathers when they know the "yeah" is not the whole answer. His son went back to the living room, and Robert stood in the kitchen for 26 minutes, thinking about a man named Danny Kowalski, who was with him in Mosul, and who is not here to watch war movies with anyone. Danny Kowalski was from Pittsburgh, played cards badly and knew it, and played anyway, had a laugh that arrived 3 seconds before the joke. Robert has not said Danny's name out loud in 2 years. Not because he forgot him, because every time he tries, he has to start with, "He was a guy I served with." And that sentence reduces Danny Kowalski to a category instead of a man. Here is the thing about the movie. It did not get anything wrong. The uniforms were right. The vehicles were right. The way the men moved through those streets was right. And every single thing it got right made the one thing it got wrong louder. Because when everything looks right, Robert's brain fills in what the movie cannot show. And what his brain fills in is Danny Kowalski. And what actually happened? Psychologists call this involuntary memory intrusion, when a realistic external trigger pulls a specific real memory forward without permission and places it directly in front of everything else. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk at Boston University spent decades studying how the brain stores intense experiences and what happens when a realistic external image pulls those experiences back to the surface. He found that the brain stores intense experiences not as memories, but as physical states. And a realistic external trigger does not remind the body of the experience, it recreates it. His family does not understand this. He can sit at a dinner table and talk about Mosul for an hour without flinching. But 14 minutes of a well-made war movie, and he is in the parking lot for 23 minutes. And both of those things are true at the same time. When he talks about Mosul, he controls what he shows. The movie takes that control away. And the movie's images are accurate enough to open a door that the movie does not know exists. And what is behind that door is not what the movie is about. It is Danny Kowalski from Pittsburgh, laughing 3 seconds before the joke, in a room where Robert was the only person who knew him well enough to find that funny instead of annoying. 3 types. Not every retired soldier carries this the same way. Some leave the room. Some stay and go somewhere else. And some made the decision years ago and never explained it to anyone. The man who leaves the room. He lasts between 8 and 20 minutes. He always has a reason ready. Water, phone call, bathroom. The reason is always true. And it is never the reason. He knows exactly what he is doing. His family knows. Nobody says anything. Because 10 years ago his wife tried asking. And the answer that came back was not something either of them knew how to finish. So they stopped starting it. The man who stays but goes somewhere else. He is on the couch for the entire movie. His wife thinks he is watching it. He is not watching it. He has not been in that living room for the last 40 minutes. He has been in Mosul. His wife can tell the difference. When his eyes go somewhere else, she touches his hand. Not to bring him back, just to let him know she knows where he went. The man who never watches them at all. He does not explain this. He does not announce it. War movies simply are not something he does. And the family learn not to suggest them. Which one are you? The man who leaves the room, the man who stays but goes somewhere else, or the man who never watches them at all? Drop it in the comments right now. Here's what his family thinks. They think the movie is too much for him. They are trying to protect him from the next one. And they are solving the wrong problem, because the movie is never the problem. He is not reacting to the movie. He is reacting to the empty seat beside him. The seat where Danny Kowalski would have been if Danny Kowalski had come home from Mosul instead of not coming home from Mosul. The movie can show the uniforms, the vehicles, the explosions, the tactics, the terrain. The movie cannot show Danny Kowalski playing cards badly and laughing 3 seconds before the joke. And when the movie gets everything else right, that absence becomes the only thing Robert can see. The better the movie, the more accurate the environment, the more specifically he can feel the exact shape of the seat beside him that should not be empty. His son asked him once, "What was the worst part of service?" Robert said, "That is not the right question." His son said, "Okay, what is the right question?" Robert said, "What did you lose that you cannot name?" And his son went quiet, because he understood the thing his father lost that he cannot name is not something the army took from him. It is something the army gave him and then asked him to live without. What Robert lost that he cannot name is the specific version of himself that existed when Danny Kowalski was alive. Not the rank, not the mission, the version of himself that Danny knew, before Danny stopped being someone who could know anything. And when the movie creates the environment where that version of Robert used to exist, without the man who made it real, Robert can feel the shape of the absence. And the shape is exactly Danny-sized. This is not weakness. A man who cannot watch a war movie because the men on screen are not his men is not broken. He is specific. And specific is the most honest thing a person can be about the people they lost. 3 things. Not a program. Not a therapy session. 3 specific things that actually help, starting from the parking lot. First, name the man the movie is pulling forward. Not to your therapist. To yourself. Out loud. Alone in the parking lot if that is where you are. Say his name. Because the parking lot is not just about Danny. The parking lot is about a man sitting alone in a car at 8:47 p.m., not knowing why he is there, when the answer is 2 words long and has been sitting in his throat for 2 years. Second, tell your family one true thing about why you left the room. Not everything. One true thing. Something like, the movie got something right that I was not ready for. Because the wrong assumption has a cost. And the cost is this. His wife has been protecting him from war movies for 3 years. And what he actually needed was someone to ask him about Danny Kowalski. Third, find one person who knew the man the movie is pulling forward. And say his name in a room where someone else already knows who he was. Not to explain him, just to say him. Because saying his name to someone who knew him is the only room in civilian life where the name does not need an introduction. And that room is the closest thing to bringing him home. His son rented the Mosul movie on a Saturday night because he wanted to understand something about his father. He got the movie right. He got the reason wrong. He thought the movie would show him what his father went through. What it actually showed him was what his father cannot show anyone. The shape of the empty seat beside him. Robert came back to the living room at the end of the movie, sat down beside his son. His son did not ask where he had been. He said, "Dad, tell me about one of the guys. Just one." And Robert sat there for a moment. And then he said, "There was a guy named Danny Kowalski. From Pittsburgh. Played cards badly and knew it, and played anyway." And his son listened. For 40 minutes. He asked real questions. Not careful ones. And Danny Kowalski existed, in that living room, for 40 minutes, in a way he had not existed anywhere in 2 years. And when Robert finished, his son said, "He sounds like he was a good man." And Robert said, "He was the best card player I ever beat." And that is the thing about the men the movie cannot show. They are funny. They are specific. They have bad habits and good instincts and a laugh that arrives before the joke. And they are not abstractions. They are men. And men deserve to be talked about, by name, in rooms where someone leans forward to hear it. The movie is not the problem. The movie is the door. And the door opens into the room where Danny Kowalski gets to exist again. If someone on the other side knows to say, "Tell me about one of the guys." Share this right now with one person in your life who has watched you leave the room and who has never asked why. Not because it will explain everything, because it might give them the right question. And the right question is worth more than 10 years of the wrong one. And the right question, in case they are watching this right now, is not what was the worst part. The right question is, tell me about one of the guys. Just one. Because Danny Kowalski deserves to be in more rooms than the parking lot and the kitchen at midnight and the theater seat for 11 minutes. Danny Kowalski deserves to be the punchline of a story told at a dinner table. He deserves to make someone laugh, the way he always made someone laugh, 3 seconds before anyone expected it. He deserves to have his name said out loud in a room where at least one other person already knows who he was. That is all. That is the whole thing. Everyone in that theater was watching the same movie, and Robert was the only person in the building sitting next to an empty seat, the seat where Danny Kowalski would have been if Danny Kowalski had come home. And the next time his son rents a war movie, Robert is going to watch the whole thing, not because it will be easy, because at the end, he is going to say, "Let me tell you about Danny Kowalski." Because Danny Kowalski played cards badly and laughed 3 seconds before the joke. And the only room where that laugh still exists is the room where someone who knew him says his name out loud. That is the only room. And Robert just found it. He deserves a living room, and a son who leans forward, and 40 minutes, and the laugh at the end about the cards. Share this right now with someone who has watched you leave the room, and who has never asked why. Because the right question changes everything. And if you are the one who has been leaving the room, find one person who knew him. Say his name. In a room where the name does not need an introduction. Danny Kowalski was from Pittsburgh. Played cards badly. Laughed 3 seconds before the joke. Had a photo of his wife taped inside his helmet every single day. And he deserves to be in this room right now. Everyone in that theater was watching the same movie. And Robert was the only person in the building sitting next to an empty seat. And he was not wrong to leave. The movie spent $40 million getting everything right. And it still got the most important thing wrong. Because the most important thing was a man from Pittsburgh who played cards badly. And the movie has never heard of him. But Robert knows his name. And his son knows his name now. And 40 minutes in a living room at the end of a war movie gave Danny Kowalski something a parking lot never could. He is not weak. He is accurate. And accuracy, in a man built the way he was built, looks like leaving the theater after 11 minutes. And sounds like Danny Kowalski at the end of the movie. The parking lot was not the problem. The parking lot was the only room available. The room where a man can say a name out loud without having to introduce the name first. And the living room, at the end of the movie, was the room that replaced it. And the living room, at the end of the movie, when his son said, "Tell me about one of the guys," was the first room in 2 years where Danny Kowalski did not need to be introduced. Tell me about one of the guys. That is the question. That is the whole question. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember that question. Because the man who hears that question from someone who actually means it sits down and talks for 40 minutes. And Danny Kowalski gets the room he deserves. 11 minutes in the theater, 23 minutes in the parking lot, 26 minutes in the kitchen, and Danny Kowalski, present in every single one of them, the whole time, without being asked. And the next Saturday night, his son rented a different movie. And at the end, Robert said, "I want to tell you about someone." And his son said, "I know. Danny Kowalski." He already knew. Because 40 minutes the week before gave Danny Kowalski a room in his son's memory too. And that room is the closest thing Robert has found to bringing him home. The movie cannot show Danny Kowalski, but Robert can, and now his son can. And that is how a specific man stays in the world, in the memories of people who were told his name. He is not weak. The theater seats 200 people, and none of them are Danny Kowalski. The living room seats 2, and his son leans forward, and that is the room that was built for what Robert has been carrying. Everyone in that theater was watching the same movie. Robert was the only person in the building carrying a specific man, and now that man has a room, and the room is the living room. And the question is, tell me about one of the guys. Tell me about one of the guys. Say it to the man who has been leaving the room. Today, not after the next movie. Today. Because Danny Kowalski played cards badly and laughed 3 seconds before the joke. And he deserves to be in your living room too.